Welcome to the 10-day trend that takes us almost up to Christmas. And if you've got plans through Christmas week, well, stay tuned. We'll take a look at what could happen next week in just a moment. But first of all, we've got to get through the rest of this week, and there's plenty to get through. Here's the bigger picture at time of recording, taking a look at what's going on high up in the atmosphere with the jet stream. It is to the south, well to the south of the UK, taking low pressure systems across Spain and Portugal. This south shifted jet has allowed us to be covered in cold air for quite some time, as you've probably noticed. But we are going to see a bit of a change over the next few days. The jet stream starts to wriggle, starts to ripple and starts to edge back further north, and particularly by Sunday, look at it now. It is heading right across the UK and taking low pressure systems with it. So this one in particular is the real game changer through this weekend, bringing a spell of wet and windy weather as the jet stream drives it our way. And it is also going to bring a big change in the temperatures. Yes, we're in the cold air at the moment. The jet is to the south, taking the low pressure systems and the milder air to the south. But again, as we run through the next few days, the map stays blue through Thursday and Friday, but we start to see a change. And eventually, the low that develops out in the Atlantic, driven along by the jet stream, look at that, brings the milder air in for pretty much all parts. Notice the far north of Scotland stays blue, but the rest of us, we're turning yellowy orange. We are turning milder through the course of the weekend. But that's all to come. Before we get there, still a couple more cold days to bear in mind. Temperatures are going to be struggling as we go through Thursday and Friday to get much above freezing as the northerly wind continues to bring some wintry showers down across northern Scotland, parts of eastern England too. Friday is similarly cold for most places, but with a subtle shift in the wind direction, we will start to see a hint of a change. Slightly milder conditions coming into Northern Ireland and especially Western Scotland. We've lost that northerly flow for most, so it won't feel as cold perhaps. And that shift in wind direction could be critical as well. It's being created by an area of low pressure that's not being driven by the jet stream, because that is well to the south at this stage. So it's quite a flabby feature, as we say, with the isobars not particularly close together. But it is going to introduce moisture, and that is going to hit the colder air, and that could provide some snowfall across parts of Scotland and over the hills of Northern Ireland. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place to cover that, because it may affect the central belt during Friday as well. So that could be the first signs of the change through Friday. We do have, as I say, a Met Office warning in place for that, and ahead of that, further snow and ice warnings to cover tonight and Thursday too. So make sure you're keeping up to date with the weather warnings through our app or through our website. What happens after that? Well, as we've already seen, that area of low pressure starts to head in from the far south, and this is how the temperatures are going to change through Sunday. It starts pretty cold still across much of the country on Sunday, but look at that warmer air flooding in as the winds have now switched to a southerly or a southwesterly direction, and by the end of Sunday, having struggled to get much above freezing for much of the week, we're in double digits across most of England and Wales. Notice the colder air still perhaps in place even by the end of Sunday across northern Scotland. Something of a northerly wind there. And that is one of the big question marks about the course of the weekend, as to just how far north that cold air gets. And with that low coming in, that could mean more snow coming in across the highlands of Scotland. But for most places, it's turning milder as that jet stream brings in this area of low pressure. But if you just take the temperature profile off, you can see the isobars pretty close together. It is going to get windy on Sunday as well. So this low is going to drive in some strong and gusty winds, and it's coming up from the southwest, so it is going to bring moisture. It is going to bring rainfall, but as that rainfall hits the colder air, there could also be some significant snow for a time, because it's going to turn milder as this system comes in. But there could be a few hours of heavy snow as it arrives. Of course, parts of the Midlands, maybe northern England, North Wales, particularly over the hills. So some of the higher routes, the M62, for example, when this arrives, won't be very pleasant. Then it gets into parts of Scotland where it could linger. And we're going to see a few days of snowfall, therefore, across parts of Scotland, especially over the Highlands. So that snow is really going to build up as we go through the next few days. Notice behind it is all turning to rain because that milder air is moving in. So it's transient snow. It may not last that long, but it could still be heavy and it could still cause some disruption. Details of exactly where and when will firm up on over the next couple of days, but something to bear in mind, perhaps if you're heading anywhere this weekend. Let's take a closer look at the temperature profile now, because that is the big question mark really about whether we get that milder air in everywhere. We know it's going to turn milder across England, Wales, Northern Ireland, but how far in across Scotland will that milder air get? Now, these are the temperature profiles for Aberdeen across the top and for Reading further south. And they're both showing that trend to milder air. These red blobs, that's the maximum temperature. The blue blobs are the minimum temperature. And this red line here is the average. So you can see at the moment in Reading, the next few days well below average, but that significant jump as we go through the weekend. Now look further north, further up and further north at Aberdeen. Again, colder than average here for the next few days. Just that blob, that box and whiskers plot gets a bit bigger for Sunday. There is more uncertainty about Sunday just in terms of how far north that milder air gets. And look at this strange looking one for Monday, showing us that the most likely temperature is above average, but there's quite a big tail here. So there's a lot of the computer model runs still suggesting that Aberdeen could be back in the colder air, even if it gets there. So quite a big difference between the size of this box and whiskers plot compared to this one further south in Reading. Lots of confidence because that box and whiskers spot gets shrunk right down. So the uncertainty is far, far less in Reading, much more guaranteed that it's going to be mild here on Monday, whereas in Aberdeen there is much more uncertainty. As for next week, a lot of eyes on that for various reasons. Well, notice the box and whiskers plots get pretty large with quite a big spread, all averaging or close to the average there in the centre of the box and whiskers, but it could be milder than average, it could be colder than average, and the same goes further north. There is quite a bit of uncertainty as we go through next week, but that's really interesting to see that difference between the mild air, very confident in that in the south, but not so much across northern Scotland, hence why we could continue to see snow here through the course of the weekend. Let's look a bit more about what could happen as we go through Christmas week then. As I said, and as these are showing with the spread, quite a bit of uncertainty. The models are just not agreeing. And that's really shown out if we take a look at what's called the deterministic model runs from the American model here, showing the map for next Wednesday with low pressure systems close to the UK and the UK still in the colder air. Compare that to the European model, which isn't completely dissimilar. We do generally still have westerly winds, but the low, there's just one low now up to the north, and the air isn't quite as cold. So the computer model is really not agreeing with the details, but this is a week away. This is not unusual to have that level of disagreement between the models. And of course, looking at one computer model run isn't necessarily particularly useful, as viewers of the 10-day trend will know. We run the computer models many, many times, and so we can generate things like this, the postage stamps. When we run the European model run 50 times, you get 50 different possible solutions. Now, I can see you can't really tell what's going on with these, but these are kind of the temperature profiles for next Thursday. And if we zoom in a little bit, you can see that number 39, number 40 have milder air, the yellows and the greens across the UK, compare and contrast with number 32 and number 41, which keep things cold. So I'm just giving you a flavour here of the uncertainty as we go through next week. There's not a lot of agreement, and that is backed up by the pressure trend graphic shown here, with the dates going forward along the top and the computer model runs going back in time down the side, and it all gets pretty wishy-washy between the blues and the reds as we go through next week, where blue is low pressure, red is high pressure. Quite a strong signal for that switch as we go into next week, with that low coming in, bringing the milder air for Sunday. But what happens as we head towards Christmas? Well, those colours get fainter. The pale blue, the pale reds, so suggesting again not a strong signal either way. And that is also reflected if we look at which way the wind is likely to blow, where red is a southerly wind and blue is a northerly wind. Strong signals for that switch as we go through the weekend, and then the colours get paler as we go through next week. But there are hints there, a bit more blue compared to red as we go through the middle part of next week, suggesting that cooler air may well predominate. It may well turn cooler again. Unlikely to be as cold as it has been over the past couple of weeks, but equally unlikely to be as mild as it will be temporarily through Sunday and Monday. So what do we know about next week? We are likely to see temperatures dropping off after that milder spell through Sunday and Monday. It is most likely to turn colder, but probably not as cold as it has been. We're not going to see easterly winds. We're most likely to see northwesterly winds. Now, they will bring some wet weather from the Atlantic, and depending on how cold it gets, that does still therefore bring the potential for some snow. In fact, with wetter conditions, we're probably more likely to see some snow. Those easterly and northerly winds that we've seen of late don't hold a lot of moisture, so we are potentially going to see perhaps a bit more snow in places. But for the details through Christmas week, and I know a lot of people will be desperate for those details because a lot of people are going to be travelling, please stay tuned to the forecast, because day-to-day details, what your plans depend on, well, they could really vary through the week next week. So keep up to date with the forecast. I say nothing unusual to have this level of uncertainty a week or so ahead. Make sure you are following the Met Office, and we will give you the very latest across social media and on YouTube.